So before we get into the topic here, who is familiar with what a SIG does in the CNCF? All right. Who is familiar with what the App Delivery SIG does in the CNCF? Oh, some friends over there. Okay. So that might actually be the good start in here. So what? Yeah, and there's one more thing here. So as we know, this is just about after the lunch break. We want this to be kind of like an interactive exercise. And as some of you are not familiar with what SIGs do, part of what SIGs do, especially end-user focusing SIGs, they collect feedback from you, the community, where you need help, collect your input, and what to do. If you use this barcode over here, it will actually take you to a small service that we will use throughout this talk to collect some feedback on some topics that are related to the SIG work. So after that session, we will obviously post the results, send them out, and also use your feedback as a little blog post. So just thumbs up if it works. It should actually work. I tried it before. I think it's great what barcodes can do, right? Yes, it's not. By the way, the barcode is not part of the work of the App Delivery SIG. So I think the most important, yeah, again, briefly mentioned it. There's from the people side, we have Brian, Harry, and myself who are the chairs, and then from the TUC, we have Alexis and Michelle, who are the liaison for the TUC. And this also gets us to the point, what does the SIGs actually do? The SIGs support the TUC on specific topics. That's where you might be familiar with something like SIG Platform, SIG Networking was from main stage. And I think after summer, it was around September, where we formed SIG App Delivery. The goal of the App Delivery SIG is really help people, as the name suggests, build and deliver applications in a cloud-native way. Importantly, we focused on the term of in a cloud-native way. While a lot of the work is focusing on Kubernetes, it's not necessarily required that your workloads eventually will run on Kubernetes. And there's obviously a lot of other people who helped us bootstrap this and work on the charter. So the main goal is to support the TUC, and amongst like driving some of the TUC work, we're also currently engaged looking at reviewing projects. So why does this SIG even exist? So why are we even around here, and why are we even talking about this? So let's get a bit into the target audience for the App Delivery SIG. During that whole process of forming the SIG about App Delivery, we identified 3 target audiences that we talk to in the cloud-native space. The first one is really people who want to get started building cloud-native applications. So once they start to move their first projects into production, move their first workloads into production, the goal was to help them to get a quick understanding of practices, tools, and how to build, manage, and run cloud-native applications. That was one of the drivers here. So if you want to get started, if you look at the CNCF landscape, for example, you will see a myriad of tools. What should you use? How do these tools work together? What should you care about? How should you train your team? What are best practices out there? Then for people who move to larger scale cloud-native environments, the goal was, and especially obviously into production, some questions suddenly start to come up. So everything looks simple when you deploy your first service on Kubernetes and you run your first couple of deployments. Then you engage in a service mesh, and then you start to really build an application. And suddenly questions come up like, how do I handle security? Or how do I write my application definition in a way that I can deploy it multi-stage without having to redo it all the time? And like more and more of those questions coming up. And obviously, a lot of people are asking themselves the same questions as they move down this journey. So the goal is to really, from the SIG, is to collect these questions and try to work on white papers and best practices on how to answer them. And last but not least, there's obviously people out there who already deployed large-scale workloads on Kubernetes already, and they want to share their experience and best practices. So in the initial meetings, we had people come up with, okay, we have this model on how we deliver and ship applications, which we want to share with the broader community, gain feedback, and also learn how to improve and optimize here. So these are the 3 buckets, which brings us actually to our first question. Our first 2 questions is, at which state of your journey are you? That's exactly one of the questions in the form here. So where would you put yourself? Just getting started, deploying your first workloads, or already being in that state of that you're running major workloads already. And then the next one, what are you looking for the most? So the good thing for the end user community is you can actively shape the direction of where the SIG is going, actually in two ways. Obviously, you can tell the SIG what you want us to work on and what to put on the roadmap. And obviously, you're more than welcome, obviously, to come to contribute in our meetings, and we will talk a bit more about this as we go. So link work for everybody? Great. We'll look at the results then later on in the talk. So what's the goal? What are we looking at for the app delivery SIG? So this was kind of a discussion. So how do we define the scope? So when does application delivery really start, and how do we have like the demarcation line to just design and implementation? So what we eventually came up with, this is really everything like from building, deploying, managing, and operating cloud-native applications. There were some conversations in the beginning, should we also talk how you move an existing application over to cloud native? Should we have best practices in how to architect applications in the first place? I think down the road, this could be topics that we're working on, and technically we have them in the charter that we can discuss them. But like with every working group, there always has to be a critical mass within the working group to get these things started. So a lot of this is obviously also influenced by the people who participate in there. But right now, this is the main focus for us to help people doing this. So we assume you have figured out how to transform a monolithic application. You have a basic understanding on how to do things. Obviously, if we are terribly wrong with our assumptions, just let us know, and we'll figure out a way how to incorporate this. So the idea is really to support people on the design of cloud-native applications, and now getting a bit more specific and what it means, building and packaging cloud-native applications. This is the question, okay, so I have a couple of container images here. I have a couple of YAML files here. I have some stuff in a secret store. I have some things lying around somewhere else. So how do I efficiently package this up and ship this in a way that's reproducible, that won't get me into trouble into 2 months from now, and that other people will understand in the community as well? And as you know, there's like many approaches out there how you can do it, like looking at Helm, looking at other tools that are out there. And Harry will talk more about tomorrow about like what's available in the market, and also talk a bit about best practices and answering questions and how to engage there. So part of the work of the app delivery SIG is, and also obviously working closely with projects like Helm and others, and developing best practices. So if everybody says, well, I don't actually know how to properly structure my Helm chart, that might be an actual outcome of the app delivery SIG to come up with something like this. Yeah, how to deliver and configure the applications for development to production. So what do you have to keep in mind, how we handle this, and eventually also operate cloud-native applications in production. So this goes all the way down into the operations piece. What do we have to take care of? How can we configure them? How will you ensure that the proper information is actually available? Which again brings us to our next interactive part, and this is going to be really interactive. So we're really figuring out from the group, what are your main responsibilities? And you will see in the questionnaire, where would you see yourself? To my previous question, where should we focus on? So what are people mostly responsible for? Are you more on the design and development side, more on the operation side, or more on the delivery side? And you have right now this luxury, obviously, that you can provide feedback that they will make it in there. And then you also have that other question, which area do you find like is the least defined one for you? Which is the one that's the most unclear area for you? So if you think of the whole process from, again, as I mentioned before, I have an app that I want to put on a cloud-native platform, obviously in many cases Kubernetes. I'm pretty clear about certain steps, but I'm pretty clear about other steps. So what are these other steps that you are not so familiar with? Okay, great, we have some more people joining. It's great that you're joining. You just came right in time for the interactive part of this. Don't worry, the whole session is going to be interactive. You'll find a barcode here, which takes you actually to a survey that we're running that will help also to shape the future direction, and also helps us to gain some feedback here on the app delivery SIG work. So following up, what is the world that we're working on? So the SIG is not necessarily, as I mentioned before, it's not a project per se, so we're not really building software in the first place, but it's more about giving direction and helping people to better work together. First one is really driving this collaboration between end users. So if you have developed a best practice, or if you're looking at best practice for something, the SIG is a great place to engage around this. as I mentioned, if you, along your journey, come into a situation that you say, well, actually would need more help around this, or we have developed a great model and we want to share it with the wider community, that's what we want to do, which obviously means if there's topics that you want to have an active discussion on, that's also super helpful. Then developing guidelines, help end users, patterns and practices. This came up a lot in the initial discussions. Like, what's the best practice for doing, or the good practice for doing X? How are other people doing X? And really having a place where you can easily find this information. So a lot of people, especially those who were early adopters of Kubernetes, have already figured out certain things, or there's places all over the internet to find those things. But the idea is here really to create kind of a central repository where you can find this information and where we then also actively can discuss these topics. I remember the keynote on Monday when Dan was asking who's here for the first year. And you've seen how many people are here for the first year. And you can assume that they're here this year because they want to learn how to move their workloads into production. And I liked his analogy of like the fourth graders and the second graders. So having the fourth graders share their best practices with the second graders here. This is also what's true here, and especially in that area where it's really great to be used. Again, sharing examples. If you just think, well, we have developed something which we think is a really good idea, really helped us to solve a problem, you're more than welcome to get yourself on the agenda and present to the SIG on these topics. Project guidance, then also foster collaboration amongst projects. You know that there's a lot of CNCF projects today. Many of them have like touch points, but projects do not necessarily need to work together that much. However, the goal, especially for the SIG, is to get projects closer to work together. Like if you think, okay, there's something in one project that should relate to something else. Or I think, for example, just to come up with an idea, the Helm project should work closer together with the OpenTelemetry project for certain reasons. Or other projects should collaborate, or Helm and the Linkerd should work closer together so that I have my service mesh definition closer to my actual project definition. This would be something to engage with and where we can also help work with those projects. And last but not least, one charter is always to provide input to the TOC where a project might be needed in a certain space where something is not available today. So very importantly for us as the TOC, as the SIG chairs, we obviously look at projects that are part of CNCF, but I don't see our work necessarily being limited to CNCF projects. So this whole idea of collaboration should really go outside of CNCF. Like there's a lot of other projects, as we will talk later a bit about the application definition. I don't see a reason why they should not participate in the discussion and why we should not like all get together. So I'm personally coming from a background in standards development, so I'm usually used to bringing people together with different opinions and see what comes out of it. And I see the same thing happening here as well. So going forward, we will also invite other people to the discussion as well. Like Harry's wearing his open application model t-shirt today. So it's not a CNCF project, but still, as we discuss how we model and define applications, we want these people to be there as well. So the goal is here really open sharing. Again, next question to really keep this interactive here. A very simple one. What's your biggest challenge right now? So obviously related to application definition. If it's like finding a place to have dinner tonight without hitting the rain, that doesn't really count here. It does count, like in general, but not for this session. And what was the biggest learning that you had in the past year? So really take the time to provide this input and also see where we're at on this one. So what's on the roadmap? What are we working on right now, and what is the currently agreed roadmap that the application delivery SIG is working on? The first one we were tasked with having like a white paper on what cloud-native applications and the state of the industry, which is more or less providing a starting point for people. So I want to build a cloud-native application delivery. What does this actually mean? What should I be looking at? And not necessarily starting from the tool question in the first step, but which problems do we need to solve, which things do we need to address, and also which options are there. So not to provide like an opinionated approach, but giving people a guidance of what they could be using instead of just maybe tapping over one project or the other. which eventually then obviously helps people to move into that space faster. Just think about it, you're new, and you want to solve a certain problem. So what do? You're using Google or your other favorite search engine and look for projects that do this. And then you run into a long process of trying out all of these projects, looking at them, finding out what the differences are, how they work, and you spend a lot of time to get started. So especially for people moving in the space and leading, as we will learn later on, at least a couple of tools, this is a very time-consuming and sometimes frustrating process. What will fall out of this is obviously an application delivery landscape, which again means choosing the right tools for the right job. I know landscapes are loved and hated at the same time. Vendors love landscapes because they want their logos on landscapes. Very often end users hate landscapes because I think vendors are just on there and just wanted to be on there and they're not super helpful. I think it's all up to us to create a landscape that's really helpful by driving individual landscape tools and solutions that we have on there by their capabilities. So for me, this is a great goal. We just don't put a tool somewhere because somebody claims to be there and you don't want to upset them. No, rather have a clear understanding what a tool in a certain space should do, and they should be able to describe how they do it and provide it. So that when you then come to that interactive landscape, you can say, oh, this tool, okay, it can do this, this, and this, but it's not that good at that. Or we'll have to pick something else there. Next one is really this collection of patterns currently used in production. That's really the whole topic about reinventing the wheel and rather build a community of practice and really ensuring that people get together. There's lots of end users of Kubernetes today. All of them have developed their own best practices for doing things, but we really think that there's maybe more exchange amongst them is helpful and learning from each other rather than developing practices on their own. The next one is also an interesting one. Defining and standardizing here, obviously with a grain of salt on rollout and delivery models for applications. So we all talk about cloud-native ways of delivering, like canary releases, blue-green deployments, and I think all of us have an understanding of what we mean by them. So we know what like a blue-green deployment is, we know what a canary is. But what's really the best practice to do it? Or if you look at different tools, their understanding of how a canary release works might be significantly different from another tool, or how you really like do blue-green, or how would like really implement this in the platform, all the way to which files and how do you define, how do you change workflow definitions on the fly? What is actually domain specific to a tool and what is generally available? It becomes way more interesting here. And again, defining patterns and working on them, maybe eventually then having a description that works even across tools, which you wouldn't have right now. And the last one sounds like a really big goal, defining a reference architecture for cloud-native application delivery. I know reference architecture always sounds kind of scary, but what's behind this is really a way where we can then all get together, like seeing really how certain tools fit together, how you can use tools and use those tools to build like your application delivery chain, ideally by having a, whatever it's going to be, a Helm chart, an operator, whatever, where you can click and choose tools and say, okay, this is a way how it could work, and where you eventually might be able then to put in other tools in there. Which again helps obviously also the standardization, because if you want to exchange your delivery tool, the only way to build something like a reference architecture only works if there is some agreement of what the exchanged information is. And I'm also personally always a big fan of putting things into practice and actually running them in code rather than in PowerPoint, because software usually runs way better in PowerPoint than it does in actual code. So what are we working on currently? Obviously, you have seen now the big goals that we are going to work on over the next year, but what's happening today? The first one is really, and thanks to Harry who put a lot of effort into this, is the Dictionary of Cloud Native Application Delivery. This is this white paper where we really discuss core concepts around application delivery and like defining this terminology and that model for cloud native application delivery. The second one, that's an example where the TUC, for example, reached out to us to get to a definition of what an operator is. And when we were talking about like what an operator is, you might think this is pretty straightforward. It's a CRD and it's a controller with a reconciliation loop. Yes, that's true, and from an implementation point, it makes sense. But think about, again, our target audience, somebody just moving to Kubernetes, building their first application, and wondering, should I write an operator for my application, or shouldn't I? Should I write one for each individual microservice? And how should I structure this? And what should go into the CRD for the definition? What should be part of the operator? And which framework should I be using? Is there a difference using, say, Kudo to the operator framework, to the operator SDK, and which differences are there, and why should I even care about them? Again, there's a link in the slides, and obviously all these slides are available to you of an ongoing discussion and really coming up with a definition. The last one, the most current one out there is still the one from, I think 2 or 3 years ago, from the original definition. And right now, the goal is really to also bring this in an end user state. Like, which problem should you have as an end user with an operator as a solution? And how does an operator solve this problem for you? Not just talking about the very technical definition, what it means in Kubernetes, because last but not least, the goal was really to talk about cloud-native applications. So what if we're talking about a purely serverless application? It might not even be running on Kubernetes. So technically, I can also implement an operator with a file on S3 and a Lambda function, if I understand the core concept, what I'm actually wanting to build here. So these are the two things that people right now can mostly get engaged with. And I now want to let Harry dive a bit deeper into the application delivery model.
Yeah, thank you. So Alois had talked about what we are doing right now in the community, but there's something that we want to highlight here, which is the application delivery model, because this is actually a mechanism we are trying to define that help community users, every participator to know what a project is really about. So I think you guys might already notice that the application delivery or application management things in the CloudNative community is really, really messed up. There are a lot of projects, there are a lot of tools, there are so many concepts, we don't know what they are. So this is a model which we're actually trying to split them into different topics. And each topic is actually a common practices and a common concepts about what a project or what a component can do. For example, Helm, right? We know Helm. So what is Helm really doing? According to this model, you can very easily to find where Helm actually can sit in. For example, the topic 1 is about application definition. We know that in order to write a trust file, we need to define what is the application, what is the artifact you want to run. This is exactly Helm is trying to help you to make it clear. So Helm is doing a lot of job in the application definition, especially for the application descriptor part. But Helm also has a lot of other functionalities. For example, Helm has some concept of Helm hub, so you can search or browse the applications in the hub, right? So this part of functionality is actually belonging to topic 1.5. It's about application packaging. Helm also gives you this kind of functionality to help you to package your applications. So you can upload the application to somewhere, and then other people can browse, search application, and download the application. It's about application distribution and packaging. And also, Helm has functionality which name is templating, right? You can just change the charts YAML files by using some kind of templating and values, and you can just deploy these Helm charts to different kind of environment with different parameters. This is actually about application parametering and configuration. This is also where Helm actually overlap a little bit with customize. So a lot of people ask the same question, okay, is customized the application definition project? I think the answer is not, because because customize do not care about what is inside your YAML file. It will not help you to define what is your application. It's not application definition. So you can see the difference here. So this model is trying to help you to evaluate what is exactly a project doing, and also help you to compare a project with another, because now you have clearly concept or definition about the responsibilities of different projects. It also happens to topic 2, application route, and topic 3, workload instances. I think you guys might have heard about a lot of projects, which, for example, the Tecton, Spinnaker, vWorks, Flagger. They are all application route projects. But what's the difference and what do they care about? So all of these projects, they actually cared about the application level management. For example, how to do blue-green deployment, how to do canary deployment. This application concept. They don't care about the pods or containers. Spinnaker do not care about containers, right? The only project or components who cares about container or pods is actually topic 3 project. For example, Spinnaker. Spinnaker route your application with a given strategy by leverage the deployment controller in Kubernetes. The deployment controller is not part of Spinnaker. It's part of Kubernetes. It's actually a topic 3 component. So you can see difference here. Operator is also another kind of, or another type of topic 3 project. So that means maybe someday you can use Spinnaker to manage your operators. It's common sense. You should be able to do that. But right now, you can't do that because there's no clear definition. Okay, what is topic 2 responsibility and what is topic 3 responsibility? And also, of course, we have topic 4 projects like Kubernetes, which give you the fundamental capabilities like container management, resource management, scheduling, the extensible APIs like CRD, the traffic management capability like Istio. So all of them belong to topic 4. But that also remind us that maybe in the future or maybe sometime, you will have other kind of platform. For example, you are using function, you're using fast, you're using function to define your application. They also belonging to the same cloud-native application delivery process. So cloud-native does not mean you have to use Kubernetes. It's not like that. So that's why we want to clearly define what are these concepts in this workflow of application delivery. So we hope that will help you to figure out, okay, what this project is really about. So we will talk more about this model in detail in tomorrow's deep dive session of SIG application delivery. So welcome to join us. So I will let Alois to keep going.
Yeah, so the last question where we'd also like to get your feedback on is how well developed you would consider your own practices in the area of the application definition model that Harry just introduced. So going back in here, so where do you feel most comfortable or uncomfortable in the definition? So when it comes to app definition, packaging, which we had a very interesting discussion about, because like packaging in a traditional app, like you have it on your mobile app, you actually can't do it, because even if you think about packaging, you still have dependencies on third parties like container registries and so forth that are not part of the package that you're actually deploying. Then from the rollout and the workload and instance automation piece. Interestingly, maybe to add up here, topic number 4 is actually not part of what we want to work on the application delivery SIG per se, because that's what obviously the Kubernetes SIG is working on. And it should ideally also be the concept that's exchangeable here. So interestingly, if we switch in another cloud-native platform, you should be able to things that you have defined on the higher layers, ideally. When can you do this? The less they are tool and project agnostic, the more likely you can do it. Because there should be no reason why you could not use one container definition and put it somewhere else. There was a question? We have a microphone here, so I can come down. Here you go. Is it on? It should be on. No, it was the other one. It's not working? Then you can stand close to me. So
yeah, I was
Sorry.
just kind of wondering, repository mirroring and those sorts of things. Like if you're on a disconnected network, where does that fit in all of this? Right? Kubernetes in a private network.
So I know where I would fit it. Harry, do you want to jump on this one? Like disconnected networks?
Here you're talking about the network fair, or?
No, if you have a disconnected repository network, yeah.
Okay.
Air-gapped environments, like where you can store your repositories and so forth. So I think the quick answer to your question is obviously having tooling in there for repository management, other kind of things would fit into the 1.5 application packaging area. So because that's exactly the point, how you package something up in a self-contained unit that you can actually ship.
Yeah, so
Which
actually,
might be very
yeah, I can analyze it more. So actually, the topic 1.5, which is about application packaging, is also about how to store the packaging. For example, you can use an OCI registry to do that. And you can also use something like a Helm hub to do that. So it's also in that topic. Yeah.
That's good. Any other questions? So let's stop here for a bit. If there's questions, feel free to ask them. You don't have to, probably. Okay, so now let's look at the intermediate results. So this might actually also drive some of the discussions here. And now we can 15 answers. That's okay, a good starting point. So let's have a look here. And I think that's, let me make this a bit bigger here. So from the people in the room here, I think that's actually not that bad. So what you can see here that we have already a lot of people who run large-scale workloads on Kubernetes. So like in the spirit what Dan was talking about in his keynote, maybe you raise your hand because then the other people can all come to you and ask you all their open questions right now. But the rest is really split between just getting started and scaling their deployment. So we see we have like quite a mix in here. And yeah, I think this is also like sharing and improving best practices across everybody, help with tool and tool suite selection, second one, and obviously not so much specific issues that people might be having. I think the best practice topic is obviously the most dominant one here. It would be great to have documentation and visual aids to help teams grow in the right direction around best practices. I would like to take a more active role in the SIG. We will come to this one. Yes, you actually can. So this is super anonymous, fully GDPR compliant. Whoever, yes, we will come to this. Deploying apps to air-gapped environments. I think that was to the question the gentleman had over there. Image tagging, versioning, rolling upgrades. Actually a great topic, how to mention upgrades and deployments. Yes. Great in the deployment area. Haven't built CI/CD pipeline yet. I think the question is how do you best build CI/CD pipelines?
Yes.
Packaging and image relocation, great one.
Yeah.
Customize, okay, that's I think just how customize fits into this.
Yes.
I would like to learn about best practices around managing, best practice question, large scale clusters.
So actually it's about, I think, multiple large scale clusters. Yeah, we actually will talk about a little bit about what is the relationship between application delivery with a multi-cluster or multi-cloud. It's actually a very interesting topic. We will cover that topic in tomorrow's deep dive session, I believe.
What are your main responsibilities? That's an interesting one as well. So we see that obviously build, packaging, and configuration management is the majority in here. And I think this also goes well in line with what our selection was in the beginning, that we want to focus more on the lower parts and less on the development and design ones. Which doesn't mean we don't do it at all, but we see that there's obviously main responsibility on the building and packaging and operation side, which I actually think is not so too much of a surprise. Because if you think especially about cloud native environments, you have a dedicated input like an artifact, and the people who take care of the deployment rollout of the artifact and the developers who build and write the code might have shared responsibilities here. Okay, what's your biggest challenge right now? Education around practices and tools? Many. Okay, I mean, we'd love to help you. Maybe you just rethink your answer here. Let's start with one. Air-gapped, I think this should be air-gapped. Autocorrect is always. But disconnected environments, I think is a good one. Managing application deliveries with focused stateful services. I think scale stateful services is a good one, specifically focusing on managing stateful apps. Need more than Helm. Air-gapped again. Security, how to keep things up to date. I think that's a good point as well.
Yeah.
Where do you identify that something else? Scale. Converting apps to cloud native. Yes, this was a discussion that we had before, and as the SIG, we were kind of asking what exactly we should be working on. So whoever who wrote this, it would be good to get maybe a bit more detailed idea on, maybe by the mailing list, what kind of help do you need? Is it really re-architecting from monoliths to microservices? Is it best practices like 12-factor applications? Because this is a very wide topic. that has to be in there. So the more, maybe you can be a bit more specific there. Yeah, the next one obviously is design, transform monoliths to cloud native. Good one. Continuous delivery, 3 exclamation marks. I think somebody's very passionate about this.
Yeah.
Good point, yeah. Transferring applications to air gap. Again, the air gaps came up. Like disconnected environments, I think is. Okay. How should ISVs deliver cloud native manifests? Can we require a service mesh?
We don't want to. We don't want to require service mesh.
I think it really depends on what do you require from your end users as a minimum, as per application definition, and what can you hide from them. Because as of today, you would have to ship everything. But what do you have to, is the minimum requirement here. Manage large-scale deployments, defining an app's metadata named version config. There is actually something today in Kubernetes where you can do some of that stuff, at least for services.
Exactly. Right.
It's in the Kubernetes documentation, but Brian pointed us to this one, so rarely people find it. Ensuring fast and secure CD configuration management in multi-tenancy. Obviously, CD seems to be a good topic here. Okay, this is now, there is one that's definitely above all others with a count of 2. Yeah, this one, better ownership makes better processes, decoupling dev packages and ops. Yeah. That's a bit hard to do here. Finding out which right groups, just providing a Helm chart is not enough. Oh yeah, that's a statement. Managing traffic and configuration, so many people have the same problem. Yes, that's why we all get together here. That's Cloud Native Anonymous, that's who we are. It's all on video right now, so I might get into problems here. How well developed are your practices? I think this is now an interesting one where people see themselves, and that might be interesting to track really over time for us. This is really for application definition. I think it's a wide variety, so people seem to be quite happy with this one. The packaging one's interesting. So I was actually expecting that there's more questions about packaging, but people seem to be quite confident here. How well are people with the rollout processes? I think that's also an interesting answer because on one hand, there were many requests around continuous delivery. At the same time, people say, we're really good with our deployment and delivery processes. So I think that makes up an interesting discussion then as a follow-up in the group. And workload automation, I think, quite distributed here. Okay, yeah, how to engage with us? That was one question from somebody. You want to work more with us? That's great. We want to work more with you too. And how can you engage? A couple of things. There's a GitHub repository in the CNCF, which is for app delivery. If you want to present some of the work that you have done, obviously if people are submitting projects, that's what they also do a lot, or if you want to have certain discussions, just file an issue. So we usually track issues there, even if you say, hey, I have like this specific problem I want to discuss, just file an issue there so we can track them. In the Cloud Native, the CNCF Slack, there is a dedicated channel for the SIG app delivery. There's the mailing list, obviously, and we have Zoom meetings every second and fourth Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time. So all of you do have access to the CNCF calendar, to the official one. The app delivery SIG is in there. They also deliberately moved this off a lot of the other meetings, so it's offset to a lot of other CNCF meetings so that people can actively participate in those meetings. The first way actually to engage more with us and more deeper on the app delivery and state of the app, so where Harry has done some work on how the app, relating currently existing projects to the app delivery framework and getting started there in more of a workshop type discussion. That will be the first working session tomorrow.
Yeah, of course.
That Harry will be leading there, and obviously you're more than welcome to be there, or obviously connect with us online.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Oh, also, some people ask what's the difference between the Slack and the mailing list. So the personal feeling from my side is that Slack, if you want to ping someone, you want to find me, want to find Alois, you find everybody here, you ping someone. But if you want to, discuss with some proposal, you want to, fight with someone, go to the mailing list. Okay.
Yeah, and also what we just started to do is we had like these discussions on the mailing list in order to have a bit of better chance to track them. We also started to create issues about very specific topics that we want to track and discuss, because even after over the mailing list, at some point they simply can get lost and it's hard to find agreement there. But yeah, to that point, if you really want to reach out and have questions, best use Slack. Mailing lists are usually follow-up discussions we have after meetings on specific topics, whether it's project submissions or other things.
Right.
So if in doubt, reach out to us over Slack.
Right.
That's it. Yeah, I think that's it for today. Hope to see some of you tomorrow. Thanks for the input. Thanks for the feedback.
Thank you.
And obviously,